Okay, everybody, welcome. Bruchim Habayim. Thanks for joining me tonight for the learning of Parashat Shavua. Bezat Hashem, we're going to learn tonight this week's Parashat. Bezat Hashem, lots of things to talk about. But first, we'd like to dedicate tonight's learning for the complete and speedy recovery of all those that were wounded in the terror attacks, and also for the retrieval of all the hostages, and for the Ilui Nishmat, all those who passed away. Hashem inkom damam, Hashem should avenge their blood. We should only know of smachot and only good news in all of Klal Yisrael. Be'ezat Hashem yitbarach. Okay, so let us begin this week's Parashat Lech Lecha. Baruch Hashem, famous Parashat. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu, at this point still Avram, Lech Lecha me'aretzecha, go for yourself from the land, from your land, from your birthplace, Bet Avicha, from your father's household, El haaretz asher areka, to the land that I will show you. He doesn't tell him where it will be. Now, over here, the Baal HaTurim has many beautiful comments that I think are important for us to see. The Baal HaTurim tells us over here that there's an interesting usage of the word Lech Lecha. Lech Lamed Chaf is repeated twice. Lech means go. Lecha means for yourself. And Rashi famously tells us why it's for himself, because by doing so, he's going to make his name great, and his family will grow, and he'll be wealthy, and he'll become famous. His reputation will become huge. So this is something that is going to benefit Avram very much. But the Baal HaTurim points out that these are two words that are spelled exactly the same, and they are repetitive, Lech, and again, Lech, Lecha, right? So, Lech, Lecha, two words that are both spelled Lamed Chaf, Lamed Chaf. So over here, the Baal HaTurim wonders, why is this so? So, says Rashi, says the Baal HaTurim rather, he has a very interesting explanation. So one of the explanations is that Lech, Lecha in Gematria is 100. At this point, how old was Avraham? He was 75 years old. He's leaving his family, his father's household, and he's now 75 years old. How old was Avraham when he was going to die? He was going to die at 175. So he's got 100 years to go. So Lech in Gematria is 30 plus 20, that's 50. And another Lech in Gematria 30 plus 20 is 50. So that's 50 and 50, that's 100. So over here, says the Baal HaTurim, Hashem was hinting to Avram, you've got 100 more years to go. You're going to pass away at 175. You're at 75 right now. You've got 100 more years to go. That's number one. The Baal HaTurim then says another very interesting idea. The Baal HaTurim says that Davar Acher, Ramaz lo bet hagaluyot. Hashem is hinting to Avram that there will be not only one, but there will be two exiles. Shishnei pe'amim yelchu Yisrael bagola. Twice the Jews will go into exile, which is the meaning of Lech. Lech means go out, go. So one time Hashem will decree upon the Jews after the first temple to go out from Israel. So that's go, Lech, go. And then again, when they come back and rebuild the temple again, it's going to last for another few hundred years. That too will come to an end, at which Hashem will say once again, go. You have to leave. So Lech, basically, go. There are going to be two times where Hashem tells us to go out of the land of Israel. That's what it says over here. Says the Baal HaTurim, another pshat. Lech in Gematria is 50. So Hashem is telling Avram that after 50 generations of the Jewish people, the exile will come. So let's read it inside. He says to him, Ramazlo, she'achar 50 dorot, after 50 generations, keminyan Lech, which is the Gematria of Lech, which is 50, Yelchu bagalut, they will go in exile, bimei Tzidkiyahu, in the time of Tzidkiyahu. Now, over here, Hashem once again is telling him another hint about the galut, about the exile. And that is that 50 generations from the point at which the Jewish people become a nation, right? Actually, it sounds like it's 50 generations from now. There will be a time where the Jewish people will go to exile, and that's in the time of Tzidkiyahu. So over here, the Baal HaTurim is really explaining to us that the choice of words Lech Lecha are not a coincidence at all. They're not a coincidence at all. They're there in order to, first of all, for Avraham to know that he's got 100 years to go. That's number one. So he's 75 now. Lech Lecha tells him, you've got 100 more years, because Lech is 50, another Lecha is 50. So that's 100. So Hashem is telling him, look, you got 100 years left, right? That's number one. He's also telling him that there are going to be two exiles, two times where Hashem says Lech and Lech, which means go and go. They're going to have to leave Israel twice. That's number two. And number three, that the first exile that the Jews will have to go through is actually going to take place in 50 generations from now, which is the gematria of Lech. So therefore, Rabotai, we have over here a tremendous lesson that Hashem is explaining to Avram all the details. He's telling him, look, there's going to be two exiles, and there's going to be another exile, an exile in 50 generations. And as a matter of fact, it's not only in hints, but in this week's parasha, when Avram is given the famous covenant, the Brit Ben Abitarim, where Hashem promises Avram that he will have a nation. At this point, Avram doesn't even have a child. But Hashem is telling him, you will have a child, and they will be like the stars of the heavens. You can't count them, right? Which is an incredible thing. And by the way, while we're on the subject, it's an amazing thing to note that for hundreds of years, the astronomers thought that the stars of the sky were about somewhere around 1,000 or 1,600, 2,000. For many, 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 many years, people thought that that the stars in the sky, based on what you could see with the naked eye, is somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000. All different types of theories have come out over the years. But the Torah, amazingly, the Gemara Masechet Barachot tells us that the stars in the sky are like, they have legions and officers and heads of the armies, and all kinds of things. And if you do the math over there, it comes out to around 10 to the power of like 18. It's a tremendous amount of stars that the Gemara already calculated, and recently it came out that that studies have shown that that's pretty much what modern findings have found as well, which is quite an amazing thing. Very hard to count, but nevertheless, the Torah already had it far in advance. But that's besides the point. My what I'm trying to get at here, Abutai, is Hashem is telling Avram Avinu at this brit, he's telling him, listen, you're going to have children like that number of stars in the sky. And Avram says, "Bameh eda ki rashena?" How do I know I'll have someone to inherit my my possessions after I die? How do I know somebody's going to take over after I pass away? And at that point, Hashem puts a sleep upon Avram, and he falls asleep. And at that point, Hashem starts to tell him, look, Avram, you're going to have Yadoa Teda. Your children are going to, not only will you have children, but your children are going to be foreigners in a land that they do not, that does not belong to them. And this foreign nation will enslave them and will take them and will make them slaves. And it says over there, Ki ger yezaracha. And if you look at the words ger, look at this, guys. Ki ger, right? Ki ger, let's think about that for a second. Ki ger is the gematria of Redu, 210, right? Ger is Reish, 200, and Gimel is 3, right? So 203. Ki ger is gematria 210. We'll see how exactly that works out. But the point is, Hashem is telling him, listen, Avram, you are going to have a nation that is enslaved for 210 years. which is a shocking thing to think about. So over here, Hashem is telling Avram all of these details, Rabotai. It's not a joke. The question is, you have to really address this question. Why is Hashem telling Avram? He doesn't even have a child yet, but he's already informing Avram of all the details that are going to happen to him and to his children in the future. First of all, he's telling him you're going to have not only one exile, there are going to be two exiles. Number three, you're going to have children that are enslaved in Egypt 210 years. And you yourself, after 50 generations, you're going to have Tzidkiyahu is going to be exiled. Why is Hashem telling him all of this stuff, Rabotai? Very hard to understand. So I want to suggest two answers. The first answer has to do with a couple of comments that Rashi makes in the Parashat. The first has to do with the idea that everything that Hashem tells Avram is in order for Avram to pray about the situation. For example, it says that when Avram got to Israel, he reached Shechem. Do we know where Shechem is? Of course. What's the famous situation that happened at Shechem? We know that there was this man that raped Dinah, unfortunately. Eventually, Shimon and Levi, the two sons of Yaakov, took down this entire city. And Avram was shown as he reaches the place, says Rashi, that in this very location, his great-grandchildren are going to have this incredible fight. And they're going to have to wipe out an entire city. So Hashem is showing him Shechem, and at the very same time showing him what his great-grandchildren are going to have to go through. And he's asking himself, why is that so? What is the purpose of this vision I'm seeing? Must be Hashem wants me to pray for their success. And it wasn't only then. He further journeys in the land of Israel, and he reaches a place called the Ai. And if we are familiar with the Tanakh, in Sefer Yoshua, there's a place called the Ai. As you know, in Sefer Yoshua, what happened was, when they first had their battle against Yericho, they had a miraculous victory. They encircled Yericho, which is Jericho, many times, 7 times, and they blew the shofarot, and the walls fell down. And they had this miraculous victory over Yericho. And Hashem told Yoshua at that time, or Yoshua announced that nobody is allowed to take the spoils of the war. The first victory, we conquered Yericho. Nobody's allowed to touch the spoils of the war. It's going to be a cherem la Hashem. It's going to be specifically as a gift to Hashem. It's not for us. We can't touch it. Okay? And surely enough, they're about to go on to the next war. And the people tell Yoshua, we spied out this city. It's called the Ai. We spied out the Ai, and this should be a piece of cake for us, Yoshua. This shouldn't be too hard. And they tell him, just send a few hundred men. It's such a shame to waste so much energy over this. This one is going to be a piece of cake, easy. And surely enough, they go, they wage war, and they get clobbered. They run back to Yoshua, and they don't understand what happened. So Yoshua says to Hashem, I don't understand. You want us to conquer the land, but you're not giving us the land. We came, we're here, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and it's not working. Why, Hashem? Why did you cause my people to die and to lose? What's going on? So Hashem informed Yoshua, I'm not with you. I'm not helping you, because something happened at the last war when you conquered Yericho, because I helped you. Nobody was supposed to take from the spoils of war, but there was one guy that took from the spoils of war. Because he did that, I left the Jewish camp, and I did not help you in your fight against the Ai. And they did lotteries, and they tried to figure out based on the lottery who it was, and it came out to a fellow by the name of Achan, Ein Chaf Nun, rather. And Achan was found to be the individual who sadly did take from the spoils of war. He admitted to it, and due to the fact that he did that, he had to be killed. It was a very sad situation that he did that. And because of that, he left, meaning that Hashem left the encampment of the Jews and did not help them fight. Once they got rid of him, then Hashem came back and helped the Jewish people fight against their enemies, and they won. Avraham Avinu in this parasha walks by that place, and he sees in the future what's going to happen. Rashi tells us. It says, "Vayiven sham mizbeach in Bet El." He comes to this place called Bet El, which is near the eye, to the east, and he builds an altar. And Rashi says, "Atidin banav li kasher sham alavon achan." His children, his great great grandchildren, the descendants of Avram, are going to fail in their battle over there in the eye because of the sin of Achan. And therefore he prayed for them. It could have been much worse. Many more people could have died in that battle. But instead it was a relatively small amount. One Jew is too much, but over there it was relatively small because of the fact that Avraham Avinu, I assume because he prayed so hard for what he saw in the future. So we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he brings Avram to the land of Israel, he's not just bringing him to Israel, he's guiding him to walk towards certain places so that he sees certain visions and realizes HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing me certain things in order that I should pray for what's going to happen in the future, that it shouldn't be as bad as what it looks like, that it should be with success. So we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking to get Avram's tefillot. Hashem wants Avram's tefillot, which is something very important. So the first answer to our question, I believe, Rabotai, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing Avram everything. He's showing Avram, Lech, Lecha. He's showing him, you're going to have not one exile, you're going to have two exiles. You're going to have children that are going to be enslaved. 200 years, Ki ger yezaracha. They're going to be enslaved. It's going to be a disaster, right? It's not easy, but Hashem isn't just showing it to him for no reason. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the prayers of Avram. And it's brought down. Rashi brings it down elsewhere. There's a big question in all these parshiot that we're going to have right now. Why on earth, of all people, is Sarai Imenu somebody who's infertile? Why can't she have children? Why is it that Rivka and Yitzchak can't have children? Why is it that Rachel Imenu, as we were on her yortzeit, why is it that she can't have children, Abotai? What's the story of all people to not be able to have children, our avot and imahot? And Rashi tells us again this incredible answer. Hashem desires the prayers of the tzaddikim. When somebody is a tzaddik and he connects to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he prays for something, Hashem loves that connection that he gets from the tzaddikim who turn to him and pray to him. And that's something that Hashem wants from all of us, Rabotai. Hashem wants us to turn to him and to connect to him, to pray to him. That's a very important thing that we understand. So Avram is being shown all these different things in the future. First of all, in order to try and to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem should do good in the future for his children. Hashem is showing it to him so that he prays for it, for the sons of Yaakov, for the great-great-grandchildren. By the way, Achan, I'm sure I don't know if you ever paid attention, guys, but Achan is the author of one of the tefillot that we say every day. Aleinu leshabeach and al ken nekavel lecha Hashem Elokeinu are two tefillot that come from that time. Aleinu leshabeach was written by Yehoshua. And then al ken nekaveh, the second paragraph at the end of davening, was written by Achan. So that was what he said before he was killed. And that's why al ken nekaveh, that last paragraph, ayin, al is ayin, al ken is kaf, nekaveh is nun, so that's ayin, kaf, nun, achan. Right? That's where that comes from. It came from Achan. And he wrote a tefillah. So that's the purpose of all of this, Rabotai, to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to have that tefillah, to pray to Hashem. So that's why Hashem is showing this to Avram. That's the first suggestion that I want to say. Why it is that Hashem is showing Avram all of the future exiles and all the difficulty that he's going to go through and all the slavery and all of that. That's the first explanation that I want to show you. Now, the second explanation that I wanted to suggest is the idea that Hashem wanted Avram to know that He has a master plan for everything. That you should know, Avram, for some reason, which we don't understand, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the ability to understand the reason behind everything. But there is a reason for it. And you should know, Avram, that in spite of all what we are talking about now, Lech, Lecha, there's going to be the first exile, Lech, and there's going to be the second exile, Lech. You're going to have to leave twice, and it's going to be King Tzidkiyahu 50 generations from now. And there's going to be slavery in Mitzrayim, and there's going to be a disaster here and a disaster there, Avram. Your great grandchildren are going to have to fight over here, and your great grandchildren are going to have to fight against the kings over there, and everything that I'm showing you, Avram. You should know there's so much going on. And you're probably wondering, why on earth does all of this have to happen to my great grandchildren, and so on and so forth? Who knows, maybe even showed him what's going to happen in Shechem with Kever Yosef, and who knows, maybe he showed him all the situations that we even have today. And he's probably wondering, why? Why all of this stuff happened? So Hashem is telling him, Avram, listen, I have a master plan. I have a master plan. There's a reason for everything that's going to happen. But I can't necessarily tell you while you're in a physical body why all of these things are going to happen. But I can tell you one thing, Avram. I made you a promise that you're going to survive. Your children are going to survive. And everybody is going to survive. As a nation, you and your offspring will survive. You're going to survive. He wants him to know that through thick and thin, no matter what, no matter how bad, no matter what the situation may be, Hashem is promising Avram, you and your offspring, because I love you and because I love who you are and what you represent, and I love that you teach your children to be tzaddikim and to follow the Torah, because of that, you will survive. No fear. You will survive. And that's something that is an incredible lesson for all of us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Avram, I have a master plan. You won't understand it, but you can know that I will be with you. I might be hiding sometimes, but I will be with you. And this, Rabotai, is such a powerful lesson. And it's amazing because it's the beginning of Avram's journey as the leader of Klal Yisrael. And it's exactly what Hashem told Moshe as well at the burning bush. At the burning bush, Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu the exact same speech. Everybody asks the question, why a bush? Why a bush? Why, Hashem, do you have to reveal yourself to Moshe in a bush that's burning? What's the story there? And the Mefarshim explain beautifully that the bush is a thorn bush, which means that there are lots of thorns and lots of things that prick us and cause us to bleed. And from time and time again, we're going to be burning. Literally burning. Sadly. It's going to be burning up that bush, and it's going to be burning, it's going to be a disaster. But there's one thing that Moshe sees at that bush, that thorn bush that's on fire. He sees v'hasneh einenu ukal. The sneh, that bush does not get consumed. It stays alive. It's an amazing situation that Moshe can't explain. He sees a bush, it's on fire, it's not getting consumed, it stays alive. And that's what Rashi tells us over there in Parashat Shmot. When Moshe is starting to lead the Jewish people, Moshe asks Hashem, if they ask me, what's your name? What should I say? And Hashem says, Eheyeh asher eheyeh, which means Hashem says, I will be with you, that I will always be with you. And Rashi explains it means Hashem is telling Moshe through thick and thin. Through thick and thin. Even if you find yourself down the road in the toughest situations, very hard situations, you should know, I will always be with you. Hashem says, I will always be with you. It doesn't make a difference what it is. I will always be with you, Moshe. No matter what. Now, Moshe decided not to give that information to the Jewish people because He felt, they're enslaved right now. To go in to talk to them about what's going to happen to them in the future after they get out of slavery is not the best thing for their morale. So he kept it to himself. But the message was clear. Hashem is telling them, you might be burned as a people. You might have the most terrible times, but you should know, I promised Avraham Avinu that you will survive. The hasneh, that bush, einenu ukal, it will not be consumed. It will never die down. You have my word, Hashem says. I will always be with you. It's a lesson for the leaders, for those that are the leaders of Klal Yisrael, to realize that even in the toughest of times, when they see the darkest situations, they should be very aware of the fact that Hashem never left us, it's such a difficult thing to swallow in the tough times, but that's what it is. And that, Rabotai, there's a beautiful, beautiful shiur that I heard from Rabbi Yisachar Friend, and I would like to connect to that. Rabbi Yisachar Friend is one of the most beautiful speakers, tremendous Talmid Chacham. I love listening to him. And he says the following incredible idea. He says that it's brought down in the Gemara, in Masechet Brachot, that Rabbi Chia pointed out that Rebbe, they never saw the great Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, the one who compiled all the Mishnayot. They never saw him in the Bet Midrash saying Kriyat Shema. And Rabbi Chia says, I never saw him doing it. I never saw a Rebbe doing that, saying Shema, because he was always learning. So they told him, what are you talking about? Don't you ever see Rebbe taking his hand and putting it over his eyes? Don't you know what he's doing at that time? At that time, he's saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's what he's doing at that time. So, what's the idea? Why does he have to cover his eyes at that time? That's, by the way, the source for all of us why we cover our eyes when we say Shema, because that's what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi did. That's what the Gemara tells us. So what was the reason for that? Why is it that he would say Shema? So the simple explanation is that's how you concentrate. You don't look at anything else. You focus on the words and you concentrate by covering your eyes. But Rabbi Friend explained it beautifully based on a different pasuk in the Torah. And that's when it talks about how Yaakov found out that Yosef is alive. And it says, at that time, Yaakov's spirit came back to him and Hashem started to talk to him because he became happy again. And Hashem tells Yaakov that Yosef yashit yado al einecha. Yosef is going to place his hands over your eyes. And that, says the Zohar Kadosh, is for the purposes of Kriyat Shema. And the question is, what does this have to do with Shema? Yosef is going to put his hands over your eyes when you say the Shema. What does one have to do with the other? And Rabbi Friend explained so beautifully. He explained the following idea. There's a very inherent contradiction in the words of the Shema. Shema Yisrael means listen up, you Jew. Hashem is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is the name of God that represents mercy. Hashem, when you see Hashem as merciful, and you understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is loving and merciful, that's very easy to understand at times like that, when everything is good. But you should know that there are also times where it's Elokeinu. Elokeinu means that Hashem is our God, but in terms of severity, in terms of strict judgment, punishment, in terms of, so to say, giving hard times, bad times, difficult times. So then the question is, which one is it? Is it Hashem? Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu merciful, loving, kind, caring? Or is it Elokeinu? Or is it judgment? Is it severity? Is it punishment? Which one is it? And the answer to that is the end of the pasuk. Hashem Echad, all of it, whether it's quote-unquote good, whether it's quote-unquote bad, all of it is all from a loving and caring Father. It's all Hashem Echad, even what seems to be bad. And the problem is that there are times, and we could really say that now, we're living through these types of times, where it's impossible to see good. You can't possibly see any good in what these monsters did just a few weeks ago on October 7th. It's impossible. You say to yourself, where is the good? We know that Hashem is merciful, Hashem is caring and a loving Father. But how could we possibly see any good over here? There's no good. It's a disaster. It's one of the biggest tragedies since in terms of Jews being murdered since the Holocaust. It was mamash a pogrom. You don't see any good over here. So it's all Elokeinu, right? So you don't see the good. So he's teaching us, no, you're right, we don't see it, but we have to believe it. Hashem Echad, which means that we have to believe that it's all good. So that's why, Rabotai, said Rabbi Franz so beautifully, that's the idea of we cover our eyes. The message of us covering our eyes is that we don't see it. We're limited physical people. We don't see the good. We don't understand that there is good over here because we're limited. Our brains are not built in a way to understand. We don't see the big picture. We cannot know until the story is fully over in order to understand how possibly such events could be good. It's impossible. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, Shema Yisrael, you see Hashem, which is mercy. You see Elokeinu, which is punishment. And you're wondering, that's a contradiction? No. Hashem Echad. It's all good. Whatever Hashem does is for good. And again, we don't know. We don't see how possibly that could be good. But we cover our eyes and we say, yeah, we don't see it, but we believe it. We believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does good. And it's hard for us. We're left with just faith, which is what it is. That's our faith. But Rabotai, nobody knew that more than Yosef. Nobody understood this message more than Yosef. Hashem is telling Yaakov, Yosef will cover your eyes when you say Shema, because Yosef understands. If there's one guy on the planet who had the most horrible experience of being taken and sold by his brothers, betrayed by his own family, and taken and then sold as a slave for a pair of shoes, like it says, and then he was taken into Potiphar's home and thrown into a dungeon for no crime, and he's wondering, dear God, what on earth did I do to go through all of this? Why, Hashem? Okay, maybe I messed up a little bit in my lifetime, but I've tried to learn from my father Yaakov. I tried to be a tzaddik. I'm holding myself back from doing sins. I'm trying to be as good as I possibly can. And this is what I'm getting as a reward. And you ask yourself, where on earth is this justice? Ribono Shel Olam, what's going on? I don't understand. How could all this be happening? And little does he know that because of his actions, because of what's going on with him, he is actually the reason for the saving of an entire nation. Because of him, because he is there, he's able to support his brothers when they come down. He's able to give them food. He's able to take care of them. He's able to support his father. He's able to sustain an entire nation, entire country survived because of him. He's able to then, in his merit, save the entire nation of Israel, 3 million people at the Yam Suf, because the sea wouldn't split. But when they saw him, when the Malach of the ocean saw Yosef's coffin, it decided to open up and let the Jewish people cross through. He had no idea, but all of that is because of Hashem's master plan. Abotai, that's the lesson. There's a plan here. There's a master plan, and Yosef understood. You can't know the whole story until it's all over, and that's the message, Abotai. We cover our eyes, we say Shema Yisrael because we don't know why it's going on. We don't know, but we have emunah. We have emunah that there's a reason for it. It's a very important thing for us to understand. And I want to share with you a story, Abotai. This story is from Rabbi Frand again. I felt I really wanted to share with you this story. It's such a Just listen to this. This is, it's not happy, but listen to this, Rabotai. There's a couple from Lakewood that one day, unfortunately, had a disaster. Their child was running outside, and unfortunately, the child was hit by a car, and he died. You can imagine what the Shiva home looked like. It was a disaster, devastation. To lose a child, especially in such a terrible way when he got hit by a car, you can only imagine what's going on. And then into the Shiva house walks in another couple. And they came to console and comfort this couple that just lost their son. And they tell this couple who's sitting Shiva that they don't know them, but they too, sadly, had suffered a loss. The story was that many years ago, this couple was involved in kiruv. They tried to bring people closer to Torah, which is a beautiful thing. And they went out to a small town in order to try and bring people closer to mitzvot. And in this town, there was no mikveh. There was no mikveh. And they did whatever they could to try and build the mikveh. They went and they begged and they pleaded with different people, different wealthy people. They got a few pennies here, a few pennies there, and they made it their business. They saved up whatever money they could for dinner. Many nights they ate cereal in order to save up money for this mikveh. And eventually they got all the money together and they built the mikveh in this little town. There's a handful of Jews that were there, and Baruch Hashem, because this couple was there, they scraped and they begged and they pleaded and they did what they needed to do. They built the mikveh, and Baruch Hashem, they put it together. People used it, Baruch Hashem, amazingly. And they maintained the mikveh diligently. They would go in, make sure that it was prepared properly, make sure that everything was done and ready for people to use it. So one night, this couple goes into the mikveh and they make sure that everything is good. They're maintaining the mikveh, and they bring their toddler with them. And they weren't paying attention for a little bit, and suddenly they realized that they don't see the toddler, and then they discover the sad news that the toddler fell into the mikveh, very sadly, and he drowned. They couldn't do anything. Unfortunately, the toddler died. It's a terrible story. And you say to yourself, like we say on Tisha B'Av, Zot Torah v'zo schara. This is Torah and this is the reward for Torah. You have these great tzaddikim that taught Torah and they were killed and executed. This is the reward. Somebody goes and does what above and beyond for you, Hashem. You go ahead and you in the very mikveh that they were mosrim nefesh. They gave up their lives. They did everything they could for the people of this small town to have a mikveh. They raised money, they saved money, they gave of their own time, they did everything they could so people could do this mitzvah of having a mikveh. And in the very mikveh that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into, so now their son, the toddler, is going to drown in that mikveh. It's unbelievable. They were inconsolable. It was no words to describe the pain. And I can understand that. Terrible. So they're telling this story to the couple who just lost their son by being hit by a car. And then the dad says the following. The father says, one night I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw my son. And my son came to me and told me that I am the neshama of a Jew that was killed in the Spanish Inquisition. And that Jew that was killed in the Spanish Inquisition never had a proper tahara. A tahara is when the body is purified before burial. The Fever Kadisha takes it and purifies it in the mikveh. And he says, my body never got the proper tahara that it needed. And Hashem wanted that my tahara should be performed in a mikveh that was built al taharat hakodesh, in the most pure way. Hashem wanted my tahara to be in the most pure mikveh in the world. And it took 500 years for that mikveh to be built. But that's why I fell into your mikveh. Abotai, I heard that story from Rabbi Friend, and it blew me away. What a story. So this dad told the other couple, he said, look, I don't know if you're going to get any dream about your son and why he had to die that way. But I can tell you that Hashem has a master plan. Hashem has a master plan. And that emunah, when we close our eyes and we say Shema Yisrael, we tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yes, sometimes we see Rachamim, we see Hashem, sometimes we see Elokeinu, and we don't see how in any way could this possibly be good. It's true. But at the same time, we say Hashem Echad, Hashem is one, which means HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a master plan. And part of that master plan is that we as a nation survive. And we accept that Hashem has a master plan. That's the song, famous song, beautifully, that is attributed to Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, Va'afilu b'astara shebetocha astara, where they sing that even sometimes Hashem is so hidden. It's hidden in hidden, but still, bevadai sham nimtza Hashem yitbarach. Definitely, even where it's so hidden and so hard to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is still there. Hashem is there. There's a reason that it's so hidden. There's a reason that we're going through what we're going through. In any situation, even person has terrible, terrible things that he's going through. But Hashem says, behind all those things, Ani Omed, I'm standing there. I'm behind them. And I want you to reach out to me over there. That's why Hashem showed Avraham all those things that Hashem wants Avraham to pray for them to get better, to pray for them to get right. Really, it's all one idea, to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to find that way. We find ourselves in situations and challenges all the time. Hashem wants us to connect to Him, to daven to Him sincerely from all our hearts, to understand that even though we don't understand, there is a proper understanding, there is a master plan, there is something going on that we're unaware of. But to have the emunah, to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't get it, but we know that you're in charge and that you know what's going on and that you're behind it. That's really the ultimate reason for everything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that to be that way. We don't understand, but we understand that that's the way it works. And Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach, it should be that we are all mitchazkim at this time in our emunah in Hashem, and we're all mitchazkim. We demonstrate that and display that, and having proper tefillot, davening as hard as we can, and telling Hashem that we understand that everything that's going on, it's all you. It's all you, Hashem. You allowed whatever situation to happen. There's a message you're trying to tell us. There's something that you're trying to tell us. We know one thing. We turn to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you could take care of all of this very quickly. And B'ezrat Hashem put an end to all of our suffering. And that way, B'ezrat Hashem, we, all of us, should see very quickly, B'mira b'yameinu, the true redemption with Mashiach Tzidkenu, and put an end to all of our suffering. And we turn to Hashem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should answer all our tefillot. We should see Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mira b'yameinu, amen. We're going to stop over here tonight, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. And we continue, God willing, next week. Only good news.